This podcast series is part of the mission of the New York Intellectual Property Law Association, NYIPLA, Past Presidents Committee, to preserve a snippet of the history of our association through the eyes of our past presidents, and to provide continuity for our century-old association's values and traditions for future NYIPLA leaders. I'm Rob Rando, the current president of NYIPLA for the 2023-2024 term. Today, we are pleased to have with us Peter Saxon. Peter was the 69th president of NYIPLA during the 1991-1992 term. Peter, welcome. And before we get into any questions, Peter, is there anything you'd like to tell us up front?
No, other than I don't have my hand in IP work, but I'm active in a lot of other areas in law and in civic activities and charitable activities. So trying to keep my brain moving.
That's wonderful. Okay, so why don't we get into the questions? Can you tell us a little bit about, you started to, who you are and where you are in your career and life today?
Sure. Well, I retired from Fitzpatrick, Cello, Harper, and Cinto back in 2011, and I decided I needed a change. So I moved to my summer house on Block Island with my wife, and we intended to stay there for a few years to enjoy island life and to kind of relax. That 2 years turned out into 6 years. And eventually the wind and the snow and everything else got to me, and I said, I need to go where it's warm. So we moved to Vero Beach, and it's been a revelation. I love it down here. I'm very active in local associations. I'm vice president of our HOA. I'm on the boards of several organizations. I'm active in the yacht club down here. I'm forming a charitable foundation, and I don't know. I helped while I was doing everything else. I helped found the Block Island Yacht Club, so that's been one of my joys, yachting, and it's great down here too. I could go, but it's enough.
All of that sounds wonderful. I'll just ask you some. I don't know, maybe if you get a little closer to your mic.
Sure.
We're picking up most of the audio, but every once in a while, a word drops out.
Okay.
That's good.
I can give you a little more voice here. Okay. Hopefully
okay, great. Helps. So how did you first become aware of NYIPLA?
Back in about 1969, I joined a firm called Kane, Dulcimer, Kane, Sullivan, and Smith. Two of its founding partners, David S. Kane and David H. Kane, were both past presidents of the Patent Law Association in New York, and they encouraged me to join and stay active. And in fact, David S. Kane's son, David H.T. Kane, became a president of the association and a good friend of mine. And he encouraged me to stay active in all the committees. So I got active in litigation, patent practice, and I really enjoyed it. I met so many wonderful men and women. Well, there were no women in those days, but we fixed that. But I really enjoyed committee work, and you know, it's a small profession. There aren't that many patent attorneys in the United States who are still practicing, and you can get to know a lot of them. And they're great people. And I really enjoyed the work there, so I stayed at it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with your sentiment more. So when did you first become involved with the association?
Probably when I first got active in the profession at all. I was with City Service Company back in, God knows, 1967. And they said, you know, you should get involved with some outside activities. And I got involved with the Patent Law Association back in '67. And I think Larry Cinto was the chair of the litigation committee. And eventually I became his partner years later. But he's a great guy. And he's very active and very funny and very involved. And he got me very excited about the practice of patent law. So I used to attend all the meetings and all the seminars that I could. and I got hooked. I really
Yeah,
enjoyed it.
well, I was going to ask you what inspired you to join, but you've already answered that question. Um, so what activities and roles did you engage in early on as a member?
Well, I was very active in meetings committee, litigation, and patent practice. And I did a lot of meeting arrangements, both for the monthly meetings, for the seminars, and for the one-day seminars, for the weekend seminars. And I really enjoyed that. And I got to know a great many people there, because when you arrange seminars, you're talking about all the guests, you're talking about getting catering range. Uh, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed meeting the people. I enjoyed seeing the crowds come, or whoever was there. I enjoyed meeting the speakers and learning from them, having a drink with them, and finding out what their lives were like. And I did that.
Well,
Yes.
continue, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Um, then when I eventually left the Kane firm, I went to a couple of corporations, and I still kept my membership active, but I wasn't able to do as much in the association. And then I joined Fitzpatrick, Hopper and Cinto in 1973, and was encouraged to stay active, and because many of the firm members were active in various committees. And back in, I'd say, 1983, David H.T. Kane was president of the association. He said, "You really ought to try to get into an office in the association." He said, "We need a good secretary." And I said, "Okay." And I went for it, and I was made a secretary, and I was the secretary for the association for 5 years, till 1988, when I eventually went on the ladder. And I loved it. I think of all the offices I held, I think I enjoyed being the secretary more than any of the vice presidency or the presidents, because you meet so many interesting people, judges, lawyers from all over the country. You attend all kinds of seminars, all kinds of organization meetings. You see foreign attorneys, you speak to them, you learn a lot. It's a small profession. You can get to know a lot of lawyers just by being active. And you make a lot of good links, where you say, "You have anything for me? Fine, I'll be happy to have it. If I get anything I can't handle here, be happy to transfer it." And it worked really well for me.
Well, you actually described some of the many benefits of being a member of the association that exists today, the collegiality, the camaraderie, and the ability to, as you said, meet other interesting individuals in the profession, as well as the judiciary. So you've kind of described it, and I guess one of the questions I have is, did you make an affirmative decision that you would like to assume a leadership role, or did it evolve over time, or was it really just as it was suggested by David?
After 4 or 5 years as secretary, I was ready to move up the ladder if I could. I mean, I had really worked for some terrific past presidents. It was Frank Scheck, John Tramontine, John Pegram. You remember all these presidents. They were really bright guys. And I really enjoyed working with them. And I saw what they were able to do with the organization. And I realized I'd like to do that too. I think I could help. You have to be involved and care and be immersed in it. And it took time away from the profession. But my partners were very supportive. And I realized if I did well and could succeed, it would help everybody. And when the time came, I said, I'm ready to go on the ladder if I can. And it happened. But I think it's a question of how many you work and how many people you get to know. They need to trust your judgment. They need to know you care for the organization and will work hard. But it's a two-way street. For all the work, it now, for all the work you put in, it comes back 10 times better, I think.
Well, there's no question, and certainly, in the position of the president, you lead by example, and you have the benefit of your board actually, seeing you roll up your sleeves and they follow, and that's the way, great things can be done for the association.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and I guess you also answered this question, but pretty much your trajectory into leading to becoming president, you were secretary for 5 years, and then you felt ready, and then you assumed the latter positions,
Right.
elevating to president.
Yes, second, first, and then president. Yes.
Sure.
And I just tried to stay active. You know, like everything in life, as you get busier in the firm, it becomes harder to spend time, and you have to just carefully block out the time that you know you need to spend on the organization. But they say you give busy people more work and they become more efficient, and that's what happens in the end. You know that well.
That's right. No, it's absolutely true. I think that's just that's part of the profession, right, Peter?
Yeah, it is. It is. And you have to be willing to take on things. People will trust you if you say, look, I'll do it. Don't have to worry about it. I'll get it done. It'll be on time. And you need to carve out the work. Find people you can delegate work to when you need them. And within the association, within the firm or corporation where you're working. It's just a balancing of priorities. And we all know how to balance priorities. It's just
That's
one
right.
to do
That's
it.
right. By necessity, right? So before we get into some specific, before we get into some specifics about your presidency, can you give us a general overview of the intellectual property landscape in terms of the issues confronting the IP or the patent community during the time you were president?
Sure. Well, during the time I was president, we were trying to develop standards for materiality in fraud cases, Rule 56. And there was a lot of back and forth in the profession about how liberal or strict it should be. And that was a real major issue. And I had my own feelings about what should happen. And by being a leader of an organization, you have a little leverage. So I went to the patent office and I said, I'd love to testify when you're holding hearings on Rule 56. And they said, sure. And I was able to go down and really push my views on what I thought was best for the profession and the clients on the standard of materiality. And with that, that's just part of the big apple of what's patentable, what's not patentable. Obviousness was a big clarifying what the meaning of obvious was. That's always been a big, tough nut to crack, but we had to face it then. And there were so many cases of patent fraud and antitrust issues arising at the time. And, how best to defend them, how best to practice to avoid fraud. And that was also a very important issue that we were considering and trying to take a lead in. And we did, I think, in New York for many years on clarifying standards for materiality, fraud, antitrust violations relating to patent fraud. Those were major issues at the time.
Yeah, and I had entered the practice in '89, so I do have a memory of that. It seemed like every complaint alleged it.
Right, exactly. And there were a great many major litigations clarifying that. And another thing was trying to get more, well, we'll get into this later, but one of the big issues we faced was getting more patent trained judges appointed as federal district judges and as appellate judges and as CAFC judges. That was a major desire for our, not only our own organization, but all the patent trained attorneys and all the organizations, ABA, PTC, everybody. we worked as hard as we could to get appointees with patent training appointed as judges in every one of the courts that we could. It took a lot of time, and you had to get into politics, which, as you know, can be interesting to say the least. I mean, I have all kinds of stories about that. It would take another hour. I mean, I went to the Department of Justice. I should step back. I became friends with Judge Randall Rader when he first went on the CAFC. And he invited him to speak at our annual dinner. And we talked about the need for more patent trained judges. And he got me an appointment before, I think it was the second in command of the Department of Justice. And we talked for 2 hours about the need for patent trained judges, district courts and appellate courts. And as we talked, it became apparent that he wanted me to be a candidate for some judgeship. And, you know, I didn't expect that. And I would have been much more receptive, but I had been widowed and I had 2 young children. And I really didn't have the time to do that and move to Washington. And so I didn't. But we tried as hard as we could to get more patent trained judges. We got a few, but we hope we could have gotten more, but it's a difficult road to hoe. It's plagued with potholes, plagued with politics. And it's like politics now. But I don't regret the time I spent at it. I just wish we could have done more.
Yeah, I understand actually from personal experience. I got as far as the interview with the White House, and then COVID hit.
Would you see Gray? Was Jack Gray there at the time?
No, this was right around early 2020, January 20. So, can you have any specific goals or a mission that you wanted to accomplish during your time as president? And if so, what was or were they?
Well, yeah, there were. First of all, I wanted to get more women attorneys active in the Patent Law Association. And after some politicking, Andrea Ryan was put on the ladder. And Andrea was just a year behind me on the ladder. So she was also a client. So it worked well for both of us. But I really enjoyed working with her and helping her get involved in an all-male world at the time, at that level. And I think she was counsel for FMC, very busy, very bright lady. And working with her all those, all the years up the ladder and after, she did a fine job and she paved the way for everyone else. So I was really happy to do that. Then I always felt it was a good idea for local attorneys to get bar admissions to other organizations. So with the help of several attorneys in New York, we brought a group of about 35 patent attorneys and got them motioned into the Supreme Court. So that was nice. I was able to move before the entire bench, the admission of each of the lawyers. We spent the whole day in Washington. And I think it was a very positive thing for each of the lawyers who came. At least you may not get to see the Supreme Court in action personally, but you will for at least one day. And I enjoyed that. And that was something that I felt was important also. Keep young lawyers, get young lawyers involved and hold out a carrot.
Yeah, so
that worked out very well.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. And I wanted to get some more interesting speakers for our winter weekends, and I worked hard at that. And we got some good ones, and I felt also in New York we should speak at other regional associations. So I went to Canada and I spoke before the Canadian Patent Attorney Organization. Terrific group of people, and we shared common problems. Years ago, when you became when you admitted to the patent bar, you were also admitted to the Canadian patent bar. You could practice there. I don't think it's still in existence. But we got involved with the ABA PTC. We had speakers going to all the seminars on the coast and in the middle of the country. And I was happy to see that that worked out very well. And beyond that, there's just so much time for goals. But I tried to push those out.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you had quite an agenda. From your perspective, what was your greatest accomplishment or proudest moment during your time as president?
I think the proudest moment was seeing Andrea Ryan become
Sure.
president of the association. Another really proud moment was getting those 30 lawyers admitted to the Supreme Court and seeing the look in their faces as they were sworn in. It really felt good. And I think testifying at the Patent Office on the Rule 56 standard and having it eventually adopted. And I don't know. I attended the retirement party for Judge Giles Rich, who was a member of the New York Patent Law Association, one of the best appellate court judges I ever saw. He was just brilliant. But I had a chance to sit with him and talk about the old days when he was practicing in New York, and I really enjoyed that. I mean, he was just a wonderful gentleman. There were more, but it's hard to remember them all. But
those are great, and yeah,
no,
those are great. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we gave Judge Giles Rich as a retirement a gavel, but he was past president of the New York Patent Law Association too. So we gave him a new gavel in honor of his accomplishments. And I had a chance to say a few things at his retirement party, and I'm very proud to have done that. It was just a wonderful judge. Someone everyone should emulate. Just wonderful man. And again, it's a small profession, and you can get to know an amazing amount of judges, prominent attorneys, prominent foreign attorneys, all practice IP law, and you can learn a lot from them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So, what was your greatest challenge as president?
There was always a challenge in trying to get new members into the association and have them attend meetings. So I tried to get the best possible speakers I could for the luncheon meetings and to speak at seminars and to be featured at the annual dinner and to get the best possible speakers that we could for the annual dinner. And I think it's not just me, but the whole line of attorney patent presidents who came before and after worked really hard at this to expand the profession, bring in a lot of good young people from the metropolitan area to keep them involved. And to do it, we tried to make our seminars, our meetings, our speakers as good as we possibly could. And that was the biggest challenge for me, I think, after all was said and done. And I'm sure it's a continuing challenge.
Sure. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And the goal. So you've identified various wonderful accomplishments and proud moments. Is there anyone that sticks out as your fondest memory?
I think my friendship with Judge Rader, lasted quite a while. I watched him grow from someone off the bench to a really strong figure and pushing patentability and pushing the patent profession. I enjoyed talking to him. We tried to have dinners whenever we could, and he spoke at a number of seminars in New York. When Judge Markey became the head of the first, he was the first CAFC, I think, chief judge. He came to New York and he spoke, and I got a chance to talk to him. And I just listened to him, and he said, I have a big challenge ahead of me. You know, I want this court to be really tops. And he was a great standard setter for everyone in the profession. And getting to know him and listening to him was wonderful. We had some wonderful speakers and judges in New York too. And getting them to come and speak, I think, and listening to the words of wisdom and the rest of it, was good for everybody.
Yeah, well, I mean, you certainly enjoyed a seat to history in terms of some of the really great folks that have been involved in the patent law system and with NYIPLA.
One last thing, I guess, is when I first joined the profession, patent litigation was in the kind of in the doldrums. I don't think a patent case had been held valid. A patent had been held valid and infringed in the Second Circuit for 30 years or so. And everyone was just wondering how we could turn this thing around. And there was a big case in New York, the Hughes case, and got a big judgment in New York. And all of a sudden, all the big firms said, you know, there's money to be made here. There's new furrows to be plowed. And the profession turned around completely. Instead of being just a profession primarily involved with prosecution and licensing and opinions and the rest, it really turned around. We had a huge litigation section available to us, a huge litigation practice available, because patents then were being held valid and infringed on a regular basis. And patentees had a good shot, you know, at financial success with their patents. And seeing that change, how rapidly it changed, and how strongly it changed the profession, that was very gratifying to see.
What was the time frame for that, Peter?
I would say it started in the early 60s. And when I was maybe first or second year at the Fitzpatrick firm, we had a patent antitrust case come up where it was on Ampicillin patent, so it was on a drug. But clients were sued by all the hospitals in the U.S., all the states in the U.S. It was a huge patent antitrust case. And it took 10 years to resolve it, but it was resolved to the patentee's satisfaction. And it couldn't have been done years ago. It just couldn't have happened. And it was really nice seeing something like that occur. It took a long time for the profession and for the general law firms and for the general corporate clients to have confidence that their patents could be found valid and infringed. We had a blockbuster product. And it was that change of mindset, which took years to develop, but it was a lot of hard work getting the patents that were good patents found valid and infringed and upheld on appeal. That took time and effort. And I was a tiny part of it, but there were many great attorneys in New York who really bore that burden. And it was a pleasure working and watching that happen.
Yes, you know, I always find it interesting where that where that change occurred, and I actually thought it was later in time. So it's interesting to hear that it really did happen in the 60s.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if that was somehow inspired by the focus on technology with President Kennedy's goal of reaching the moon.
Yes, I think that was part of it, but it was getting the right judges in the appeals courts who would really listen and who just didn't watch them. It was easy to say, I can understand what that patent meant. It was obvious, and it's hard to educate the legal profession, especially the judges, on changing standards. And it takes a lot of work and time and preparation. You really got to be good as presenting the case and presenting the appeal and being patient. And inviting the judges to seminars, having them listen to our concerns. But it took 10 years, for it to really sink in. But it did. It did change the profession for the best, change it. It changed it from a backwater profession to a group that all the leading firms wanted to become parts of. They wanted their own patent group. Changed the whole profession.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I mean, I think I'd take it a step further, and I think it helped to instigate a technology-driven economy.
Oh, of course. Once patents could be found valid and infringed, entrepreneurs were not afraid to spend their money, develop the right technology. Absolutely right. It helped the country, it helped everyone. And if you look at the patent systems of the major industrial countries, those with the strongest patent systems are the most successful in technology. US, Japan, Germany.
Yeah.
The only failure that I think is still there, we tried to establish a patent and trademark system in China back in the 70s, because you couldn't do anything about IP in China for a long time. It was just didn't exist. And in order to protect clients in the United States, they needed a patent system. We got something started, but it was still too political, and it's still too political. I mean, in the end, it's to their benefit to have a strong patent and trademark system. Maybe it'll happen, but it hasn't developed the way it could have happened. It just hasn't. And
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
There's just so much you can do.
Yeah. Well,
Fellows like John Pegram, John he'd go and talk and talk and talk, and we had a group that really spent time with Chinese and trying to develop a system which we felt would be in their best interest and our best interest. But you can only get so far.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I think, today, especially with the patent eligibility Section 101 issue that we confront, and also, with the PTAB, China's enjoying a lot of capital outflow and investment from this country in their patent system. So in some ways, we may have succeeded without knowing.
Yeah, yeah.
And maybe as an unintended consequence of the state of events currently with the U.S. patent law system.
Yes, I think it made such a great difference to strengthen the patent system, because it's the system that really, it's the engine, it helps the engine of the country run. And without a strong patent system, the engine doesn't run the way it should. It never would. And I think that's the one thing that younger attorneys should continue to push, keeping systems strong and resisting efforts to liberalize the system and make it worth, in the end, nothing. That doesn't help anyone. That doesn't help anyone.
That's absolutely correct. And it certainly was the genius of the founding fathers.
Yes, absolutely. When you look at it, I mean, how many patent attorneys in the existence of the United States have there been? My number was 24947. That dates me, but I don't know where the numbers are now. But even among all those with numbers in the 80s and 90s or wherever they are, only a fraction of them are still practicing at any one time. It's a small profession, but we can have a very strong effect on the economy by the way we practice.
That's right. So let me ask you, Peter, what advice can you give our younger or newer members of NYIPLA if they aspire to assume a leadership role or perhaps even one day become president of NYIPLA?
It comes down to this. If you want to be successful in your profession, you've got to know it. And the best way of getting to know the profession is to get active in an association. Because we are a small profession, you can know the guiding lights in that profession personally, which is not possible in most other branches of law. You can know the people who really pull the oar hard and move the profession forward. You can learn from them. You can help them. You can help the country and help yourself. You can make contacts in industry and politics with people all over the country because we're a small profession and from time to time we're needed by people outside the profession. If you're active in an association, you will get to know politicians, lawyers, judges, you name it. It will help you as a lawyer, it will help you with your profession, and it will help the profession. So it's a win-win situation for every young lawyer. I think that it's a mistake to assume others will do the work. If you do the work, I'm a part of it. You can look back, and I guarantee you'll look back with a smile because it's worth it.
Well, is there anything else you can add in terms of how the younger or newer members can get the most benefit from their membership in NYIPLA?
I think
I think you've identified many aspects.
Yeah. Find committees that may need someone that may be a little undermanned, underwoman, that need people who are willing to work and work for it, whether it's a green book, whether it's a whatever committee it is. Work hard at that committee. You can become chair of that committee in time. Once you're chair of a committee, people start to notice you even more. And being on the ladder and being an officer in the association is a very positive thing. It helps you, it helps the firm you're with, the corporation you're with, and it helps the profession. And I think when you look back and see at a career, you can see things that were important in that career. Being an active member of an association is one of them, to me. Doing a little bit of the work that has to get done, it's very worthwhile.
Well, Peter, you mentioned on Orion, and I'm very proud and happy to tell you that that legacy has proven itself thanks to you. So you can add that to another proud moment. My immediate predecessor is Heather Schneider, and the two immediate successors are Patrice Jean and Abby Struthers. So you accomplished quite a bit, Peter, and I compliment you for that.
Well, thank you. I'm just looking at the firm when I started. There were no female members. And by the time I left the profession, half the firm, more than half, were female attorneys. And it says a lot and shows work hard, things can change for the better, socially and every other way.
That's right. So Peter, we've coming to the end of the interview. Do you have any final thoughts as we wrap up this interview?
You get out of life what you put in work, in play, and everything else. And one place that you can get a lot more out of life is to put something into the organization that helps the profession run better. And being an association and committee member is a really positive thing. And it's better that you do a little bit of it yourself, it seems to me, than having someone else do it and tell you this is how it's going to go. I'd rather be part of the engine than part of the caboose. That's all.
I like that a lot. Well, I will tell you, Peter, this has been a wonderful hour. Well, not quite an hour, but it's been a wonderful conversation. And I will say this, my only regret is that we didn't have a chance to work together at any point. but I truly am grateful for you taking the time to do this. And are you able to attend the judges' dinner this year?
No, well, being in Vero Beach, I hate to leave it. I do like to travel and do other things. It's hard to get to New York for a day or two anyway. Among other things, my wife decided to become a real estate agent down here. She said, now that you're retired, why don't you help me?
Huh.
I took the real estate exam, my first exam in 50 years, and now I help her. And it's meeting people, which I really enjoy. So she's active and she has a nice business going, and I enjoy participating in it. It takes a lot of time, but it's, otherwise I might be able to attend more in New York, but maybe I can. Maybe I can.
Okay, well, it's March 22nd. If you could attend, I'd be thrilled to meet you in person then. But if not, I understand. And, there are other events, maybe you'll be able to make one of those.
I'd love to come to the judges' dinner one day. We'll see if it's possible.
I can tell you our outstanding public service award recipient is Second Circuit Judge Joseph Bianco,
Excellent.
who I've had the honor and privilege to work on various matters with him over the years. Efforts. He's an amazing individual with how much he does outside of his work as a judge to give back to the community and younger people. And as our keynote speaker, I wanted to get someone who was a singer-songwriter, and we do have John Andrasik, who is the singer for Five for Fighting, and one of his songs is Grammy nominated, and so he provided the speech and will do performance as well. So really exciting. Looking forward to that.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Congratulations. That's great. Everyone will have a great time too.
Thank you. All right, Peter, again, I've truly enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. And to all the people watching, become active. In the end, it gives back much more than you can put in.
Well said. Well said. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Take care.